Hey everyone, Scotty Wick back here to talk through layout and playfield design. So, as we talked in the last video, you've kind of got your layout dialed in, or at least you've got it somewhere where you would like. Again, a lot of the main thing you're going to be trying to do is figure out your lights and the modes and the different things you need. And then you'll export that as a blueprint. So if I turn everything off here in my Photoshop file under Playfield, you can see my blueprint here. What I actually do in this is to go in and invert it. So it's going to come in like this in white, and you can see my different elements of my page of my table laid out there, right? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm working in Photoshop here. You can use a bunch of different free programs that are out there, and Sketch and some other stuff that people really like. I work in Photoshop. I think all these are going to be relatively applicable, so you can try to follow along, or if you have Photoshop, this is how I do it. So what I do is I invert it, and then I set it to screen. So normally when it's inverted, it'll be flat. And when you set it to screen, that's going to allow it to overlay items. So now when I'm working on this, you'll see it'll just be these little white lines around. Again, I can turn that off and on. You'll notice here things don't always line up. We've got this circle where the sausage is now. And that's because I didn't know it was going to be a sausage when I kick this out. So that way I'll go back in, and my final blueprint would be have these lights drawn to fit these items. But for now, when I'm working on this, I just know I need a light there. I need 3 lights there. And I've made a decision not to do 4 lights. So I need 2 lights here. I need 3 lights here. I need lights here. So then I can go in and build each of these items. You see some lights have changed a little bit, so I'll move the elements around. And then I can draw them later. So how I usually start this, it's quite an undertaking. If you really want to do it right, it is quite an undertaking, and it can be a little daunting. So here's how I start. I always start as much as I can bottom up. So if we look here, I have a folder for my playfield and my plastics. Definitely make sure to put those on different layers. Your plastics being like the tops of your side areas and your slingshots and your apron. Just leave those on a different area. And what you're going to do is start with trying to find just a background in general. Let's take all these things off. A background in general that you like and that feels like the direction you're going. Me, for this table, it's pizza time. I found a crusty, gross-ass, greasy pizza box. And I thought, you know what? That'd be pretty sweet. So the back of mine, the base of all this stuff, is a greasy, dirty-ass pizza box. I would generally try to find something that has some texture and has some color, but it's not overwhelming because we're going to put a whole bunch of good stuff up on top of this. So we don't want it to be too much, but I think it is kind of cool if people like look and they're like, oh man, that's like on a gross pizza box. That's kind of awesome. So start with a background. Not only is that going to be in general helpful because it'll kind of start your color palette, but secondly, now I can see everything. It's really easy to see my lights and the things I need to design around on here. The second thing that I'm going to do after that, when it's me, is I'm going to do my center. A great, in my opinion, and again, argue it if you want, a great pinball table has to have a great center area. This is the place that a player's eyes are going to be looking at the most. So I love when a table has a really exciting center area. So if you're going to put time into one piece of art, I would put it right here, right where the eyeball is going to look at. So for me, there's some standard things that we're going to have here. 5-second rule. This is, I did that because dropping a pizza on the ground, you get to pick it back up and eat it again. 5-second rule, which is my ball save. I like to have my multiplier X down here. That's pretty regular. My Playfield X, which is what these 2 and 3X and his eyeballs are going to be. Pizza time's actually going to light up when you're in pizza time. And then I have the things that build my bonus X. Again, that's all up to you. Every table can be different. But I would use this area for your main visual impact art. Because that's what, when people look down at this table, they're going to be like, oh, damn, that looks awesome. I would also give your plastics some love. You can see my plastics here for my slingshots. People are going to look at those slingshots a lot. So making some cool slingshots, always helpful. All right. So how do I do these things? What are we looking at here? Let's just go for the 5-second rule. So in the 5-second rule, what I have is, for this one, I've got this little art I found. So if we zoom in on this, let's get all up in there. If we zoom in on this art, you can see I've got this, super cool piece of art I found somewhere on the interwebs. And then I've just found a font. I would definitely say try to find a font pretty early that you like. There's tons of places on the internet to find fonts. I felt this one really had that kind of, I don't know, just the style I was going for here, kind of a California tattoo-y kind of thing. It's called Himalaya, and it's out there. I think it was free, whatever. One thing that's nice to do is on your items, most things need to have some kind of a stroke or a bevel around them. We want this to look like it's an insert, like it is actually cut piece of plastic inserted there. And yeah, this isn't like the most realistic one, but in general, it looks all right. So if we look at it without, then we're just looking at that sitting on the table. Like that just does not look as pro as we put a little bevel on there so it looks like it's inset, put a little stroke so we make sure it sits off of things, and then I've dropped my type right up on top, and again I've stroked it so that without that stroke, you wouldn't see it obviously, but trying to figure out a color palette there. So I've got those two little items that I've dropped in for the 5-second rule. When we're going for something like the center area, you can see I've kept that on these, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x. I've kept that bevel, and again, just found a cool piece of art somewhere on the internet, and then put it in there. Pizza time, same thing. This is from an artist I really like that did a lot of work for Pizza Time. The band, which this is loosely based upon. And so you can get creative, obviously, with like this beer on the left. Again, left and right, I found these little beer bottles, and I've put these lights on top of them, and all those are circles. So I have in here, I just have my copy, again, using my font, and I've got just circles that I put in colors up on top. They're using that same bevel and emboss. And there you go. So what I would say after that, the next thing to do after that is work on your lights and your lights only. So a lot of times it's really easy to be like, well, I'm going to put this cool art up on this lane and this and that. Don't even think about it. Literally don't even think about it. Go and fill out all the lights that you know you need for this table, and then move on to everything else. Because most of the time, it's going to take up most of the table as your target, especially you look at like a new Stern table, or even Jersey Jack. Like the majority of the table is lights, and the things that decorate the lights. So spend your time getting the lights done, and then go from there. So if we look at this, the next thing, I have these lights up the center, which this is the pizzas you have to eat. So that was my next biggest lighted element if we look at the blueprint. So I've got the personal pan media. So I got all those that you have to do. I'm going to next do the modes that are around it. So I have the modes on the right and the left, which the lights are going to be in my lights. So I've got my death or glory, I've got my lights there. I've got my. I didn't want to do the standard Jersey Jacks like inset rainbow lights. I wanted these to be a little different. So I've got my extra ball and my jackpot as a lightning bolt pizzas, and we come in peace, pizza. In pizza we trust. My modes there. So I've kind of built my lights around, you know, around more unique options in this one. After that, I've got my right orbit lights. So these light up when you hit the right orbit. I've got my sardines at the top, which those light up when you go through the lanes there. Extra cheese, which is my super jackpot guy. I got my slice lights, so these are on each of these hit targets. You have slice lights. I've got my ingredient lights, and I've got my loop pentagrams, which these light up the loop as you go around them. So if we look at this table, like I've done nothing other than lights that activate this table, like that are used on this table. And essentially the whole thing is like done. Like, if we think that if I throw the plastics on, which are the things over the top, this layout's like essentially done. So a lot of times you can get caught up, and people get caught up. And again, obviously the plastics, we got to talk about that. But a lot of people can get caught up in trying to make the art of all these different pieces, when really, if you just do lights, if you just figure out what you want to do for your lights and get creative with that, you're going to end up with a table before you know it. So let's take the plastics back off, and we'll look at the additional items that I've added in here so we've got bumper shine, and that's going to be up here. That's like on AC/DC. It's going to have a flasher light in the middle of the bumpers that flashes when people hit them. So that's kind of a light too, really. I've got my outer lanes here. That's just some art for my out lanes. Cold dead hands, death slice. Got my 5-second roll back on. Target cutouts. That's just, so these are to make it look like it's an actual table. I like to put these cutouts anywhere the targets are. Because that's how they're pushed up through the table if it was actually made. So if you look at a real pinball playfield, it'll always have those in it where the targets come through. So I like to put them on. Again, it's not necessary. Obviously, nothing's coming up through there, but I don't know, just looks kind of nice. I then visually like to define my shots. Another thing that's not necessary, but we'll see here, I put in what I call my shot swoops. And I just think it's nice that when you're playing, that you have a visual reference point to hit your shots. It kind of helps the player understand the playfield a little better, in my opinion. Other people can, other people would agree or disagree. You can see my wife there wants me to come home. So I gotta finish up this video. Launch lane. Any pizza is a personal pizza if you believe in yourself, which I believe in. Just a little fun art on the launch lane. Dugouts. I like my dugouts in games to be black, so it looks like it's falling into an actual dugout. We've got. Sometimes I don't even know where these lanes, where these things go. Is that my pepperoni pizza guy? I don't know. People hate pepperoni. I mean, hate pineapple on pizza. I think it's delicious, so I put this little hidden nugget in here for someone no one needs to know. This was a dugout hole up here too. We got this swirl off of this death bumper I added in there. That is like, it's nasty. If you hit that bumper. I took the idea from what was that homebrew table? Crap, I forget it. But that really cool homebrew table that just got put out had a death bumper over there, and I loved it. Even though I've yet to play it, I've just watched people backlit and look sweet. And then I'll go ahead and darken everything. So I put an overlay. Everyone's always like, oh, create all your stuff dark. It's like, no, don't do that. Just create it full color, and then you can adjust the dark later by putting stuff over the top. So that's how I would suggest doing it. Again, people might say differently, but I think my tables look pretty damn good. So this is how I do it, you know, just because then you're not like tainting all the pieces you bring in the whole time. So once you have your full thing, then you can turn it off. I see I've got my blueprint off here. Table layout's pretty dialed in. And then what I do for my plastics are a bit more of a pain. If you think about this, like I have my plastics drawn to be exactly what they are on the table. I didn't need to do that. You know, because when you apply it, it's only going to apply to that plastic piece. It's not going to apply to everything else around it. So if I had just laid this like checkerboard over this whole area, it still would have done fine. The reason I didn't do that is I like to put borders on my plastic because I think most tables have a little border. So I like to do a little bevel border on my plastics. So I actually draw them in here to be the exact size just because I like that bevel border. You don't have to do that on Stranger Things. I totally didn't do that. So that's kind of up to you, how you're feeling when you're designing it, if you want to do that or not. And then for me, I put my apron on a whole other file. So I generally don't like, you know, apron's kind of specific. It's down here on its own. So I take that file out, and then I just design that on its lawn. So there you go. That's how I suggest designing. I hope that helps. It's obviously a lot of work, but if you just focus on let's get my lights, let's just get my lights and my base. Let's get a base texture and get my lights done. Then after that, you'll see that you're much further along than you might have thought. So scrape the interwebs for all the free crap you can find and cool, fun art. I mean, you're putting this thing out for free, and so I just say, you know, screw it. If you ask me to take it down, that's fine. I don't really care. Just scrape the interwebs. Put up something fun. If you have something pretty specific like this pizza time art, I actually contacted the artist and said, hey, you know, I'm doing this. Is that cool? And he, you know, got back to me right away and said, yeah, it's awesome. So, you know, if you've got some stuff you really want to use, definitely reach out to the artist. Most of them are going to be like, you know, are you selling it? You're like, no. Okay, cool. Use whatever the hell you want then. So anyways, that's how I design and develop tables and get this layout done, and then bring all that back in, and then we'll start working on coding it. All right, thanks. Bye.